Hey guys, it's Kevin in my review for The Mauritanian. So what The Mauritanian is essentially about is we center on the true story of Mamadou Ould Slahi, and he basically is this captive that, he's accused of conspiring with terrorists in 9/11, really without any evidence whatsoever. He isn't given a trial or anything. He's immediately thrown into Guantanamo Bay for quite a few years. And eventually, this character, Nancy Hollander, who is this defense attorney, she gets a hold of it, and she is going to do what she can, along with her colleague, to try to prove his innocence and hopefully just give him that fair trial that he really does want. So, The Mauritanian, overall, I was excited for this film. You know, any film like this that comes out that has a promising premise, such as this one, it is one that does interest me. It seemed like a film that could definitely be really interesting. You had a really talented cast here, and it seemed like one of those, again, weird year, as I've talked about in many other videos, where we have late Oscar contenders coming out in February, and this seemed like a very intriguing one for sure. It was a film that I was definitely very excited for. I finally did get a chance to see it, and look, I will say this about The Mauritanian. There is a lot of stuff about this film that is very effective for sure, and this is a story that very much did need to be told. But this is very clearly nothing more than just a desperate attempt to get a few Oscars from some actors, and that's really kind of it. The Mauritanian, as much as it tries, is very much an Oscar baity type movie, and really nothing more than that. And I really hate saying that, but that really is the case with this film. We're just getting to right now, though, starting off with the cast. And I think that is definitely one of the best elements of this entire film. The entire cast here, everyone does a really great job here for sure. Let's start out by talking about, though, the absolute standout of this movie, and the person that really holds this entire film together, and the person I think everyone's going to be talking about, and that is Tahar Rahim, who plays our main character here of Slahi, and he is phenomenal in this film. He does an amazing job of really capturing the pain and the anguish, but also the abandonment that this character is really going through, but also really giving you a sense of menace. You know, you're never entirely sure if this guy is on the right side of things or not. You're never entirely sure if this guy is actually someone we should be rooting for, and Rahim does a really good job of, I think, fluctuating between those two tones. You know, at points you do feel a lot of sympathy for this guy, and then some points you're really kind of terrified of this guy because you don't know if he actually is accused of the things that he's been accused of. And I think the film definitely does I think Rahim did a really great job with that. I think that's one of the most consistent elements of this entire movie, and I think the film really is worth seeing alone just for his performance here. He has been hailed a lot. You know, he's gotten like a Golden Globe nomination. It was absolutely deserved because I thought he just did such an incredible job throughout this entire movie, and I really do think is the one big takeaway from all of this, at least for me. As far as the rest of the cast goes here, I mean, everyone does a good job. Jodie Foster, Shailene Woodley, Benedict Cumberbatch, Zachary, Levi, all of them are really good here. This is definitely a very talented ensemble for sure, and I don't think anyone is disputing that in terms of the acting here. But that being said, in terms of like big performances, it really is just Rahim. He really is that big standout of this entire movie, while everyone else is just kind of solid overall. But now let's get to the directing and the writing here, because this is where we get to the things that really do fall flat. Kevin McDonald's directing especially just isn't really anything that special. I think that's really the best way to put it, is that he didn't really bring any specific style, anything all that different to this movie. It just feels like all the type of trappings that legal and political dramas like this fall into. There really isn't anything specific that he does with this film stylistically that really impressed me all that much. I can definitely tell that McDonald cares a lot about this subject matter. He cares a lot about what Slahi went through, but he just doesn't really do much in terms of the directing here. I needed a lot more from him, and it just really wasn't here. It was lacking a very certain style to it that I think if the film had more of, I think it could have made the film a lot better overall, but it just didn't, and so as a result, it just really didn't do much for me in terms of the directing. But the writing is really where we get into, I think, the root of my issues here, because I will say, let's get the positives out of the way. The things this film does a really good job with right off the bat is really making you care for Mamadou Ould Slahi. The film really takes its time to delve into his life and show you the kind of person that he was. I mean, this is someone that was quite literally, pulled from his life. He didn't get to see his family. He didn't get to see, any of he didn't get to see his children, nothing like that. He was completely pulled out of it, and you can see the effect that that's had on him. This was only supposed to be for a couple months, but it turned out to be like 7 to 8 years. And he was rotting away in this jail cell, again, without any real charges or anything. Nobody knew if he actually was guilty of what people were saying he was, and you can see that that's had a real impact on him. But the film also does a really good job, I think, of showing the countless amounts of abuse that he dealt with. I mean, every single warden, every single soldier, everyone he came across in that jail cell was just so hostile and unethical towards him, and they put him in these really disturbing situations, and the film captures it really well. I really got a sense of what Slahi went through, the pain that he went through, how he felt that abandonment throughout a good portion of this movie. I mean, they really don't hold back, and I think that portion of the movie is really interesting, and I found myself very invested in what they were doing there. But again, I also found myself very terrified of Slahi at points, because again, you don't know if he actually is what they say he is, and seeing his sort of evolution from this guy that is just starting to go to jail to someone who becomes a lot more, he grows a lot from it. He changes into a different person towards the end of this movie. They did a really good job of showcasing that here, and the countless abuse that he dealt with. I mean, this is a story that needs to be told. These are things that do still happen today. Innocents like this, with, again, innocent until proven guilty, they are tortured constantly, both psychologically, mentally, emotionally. I mean, the waterboarding and things like that. We've seen this covered in other films, but I think this film did a really great job with showcasing it and really putting you in Slahi's perspective and showing what he's going through. I thought that was easily the most effective part of this film. The problem is, that's not really what this film is about. That's only a subplot of what's really going on. What we're actually dealing with here is really basic and boring legal drama that we've seen in a lot of films before. You have Jodie Foster's character, who is on the right side of things. She's trying to prove that he is innocent, and then Benedict Cumberbatch's character is the complete opposite. He's trying to prove that this guy is guilty, and that everything that he is that is happening to him is completely justified in that way. And it's not that I don't enjoy seeing these characters go through that, it's just I didn't find myself all that compelled by what was going on here. It seems to be a fairly straightforward case of, is he guilty or is he not? And the film tries to present it as there's more going on, and there is, but it's not told in a very interesting way. And I think that's what really does hurt this film, is that besides Slahi, I just didn't find myself interested in really any of these characters. I didn't find them to be compelling. I didn't find them to be characters I latched onto. They just felt very generic to me, and I needed more from them than just how this case really does affect them. Let's take Shailene Woodley's character, for example. She plays this character, Terry. She is clearly less experienced in this field than Jodie Foster's character is, and she's very much her colleague throughout this entire thing. She's like her associate of sorts, and she starts off as this translator, and you can see that she really is getting wrapped up in this case, and as the film goes on, it starts to affect her more heavily as things are happening. But the problem is, all of that is told to us. We don't actually get to see what this is doing to her. There's a scene where she is talking to Jodie Foster's character, and, you know, she's lamenting about an incident that has happened with her family, or a way that this case has really affected her, and I was just kind of sitting there like, okay, but I really wish we could actually see this play out, and actually see what she went through, and we just don't really get to see that, and I think that's what really does bring this film down, is that outside of this case, there really is nothing to any of these characters, and I think that's what really does hurt the film, and I just, because of that, could not find myself that engaged with the material here. Once we cut to Slahi, then I was interested, but everything else going on, I just found to be very generic, and it's mainly because we've seen this done a lot better in other films, where you have that really good detective that is on the, you know, you have that really good lawyer that's on the right side of things, and they are so good about everything they do, and they make sure they research everything, and they really are trying to, you know, be on their client's good side and prove that their client is innocent. But then the other lawyer is not nearly as good in that way, but it just isn't really that interesting. And also, apart from, like I said, these characters just fall very flat. They feel very underwritten, and I just needed more from them overall. There's a scene with Cumberbatch and Foster as well at a diner, and you're clearly supposed to be invested by what's going on, and I just really wasn't. It's supposed to be a big moment, but it just really wasn't here at all, and I think that definitely did bring the film down for me. And Shailene Woodley as a character here, I think, just gets completely sidelined. After a certain point, they really just don't know what to do with her. And I think she definitely could have served a bigger purpose in the narrative than she really did. Because it is very much Foster versus Cumberbatch for a large period of this movie. And then you have Zachary Levi and Shailene Woodley. And again, they're characters that they just don't really know what to do with here. Levi, they do, but Woodley especially, I just felt they needed a lot more from her, and they just didn't really utilize her in the way that they should. This is a great actress, and I really wish they would have just let her show it, but they really didn't here. Especially when it comes to Cumberbatch's character, he has this subplot with Zachary Levi, this guy that he is friends with that also was heavily involved in everything, and I just could not get invested in this plotline at all. I like both actors, but the characters I just did not care about, and anytime they cut to it, I just found myself so incredibly bored by what they were doing, and I just didn't think they did a very good job with that overall. So yeah, like I said, the screenplay here, it's just really not that great. It's not terrible or anything, and again, I think there is a lot of things that do work, you know, when you're really seeing the harsh treatment of what Slahi went through. It really does work, but everything else just feels very underwritten overall, and I think they could have done a lot more with it. And again, all of these actors are great, in fact, but these roles, they don't really give them a chance to showcase their true talents, and I think that really does hold this film back overall, unfortunately. So yeah, like I said, the screenplay here just really wasn't that great. The cinematography in this film is really interesting. The film plays around with its aspect ratios a lot, especially in the flashbacks portion of the film, and I think that is when the film really does work. I enjoyed the aspect ratio a lot. The 4:3 aspect ratio that they use in the flashbacks, it's very effective in that way, and I thought it was a good contrast to the present day stuff, and I really did like that. There is a very interesting stylistic choice in the last 30 minutes of this film. There's a whole sequence that happens, and it definitely did add to the intensity for sure. I really liked the way that whole sequence was filmed, and for me, it was definitely the most memorable part of this entire movie, I would say. The score as well here, I think, is definitely a big consistent element. I think the score done by Tom Hodge is really good. It's very powerful. It's definitely one that kept me invested, and I thought his score was definitely really good. And the editing, I think that's the other issue with this movie, is that it's just way too long. There's a lot of scenes in here that just go on for a while, and after a certain point, the film just starts to feel very repetitive, and it feels like we're not getting to this as soon as we really should. There needed to be more going on with this story to justify that 2-hour runtime, but it just really didn't, and as a result, it just really started to wear on my patience. I needed the film to be a lot shorter than it really was, I think. I don't think it needed to be 2 hours at all. I think definitely it could have been significantly shorter, and I think you still could have gotten done what you did in this film, but I think because the movie was so long, that's another reason why it just kind of lost me in quite a few areas. And the way the film ends as well, I will say, is very effective. It's definitely one that had a pretty big impact on me. I was not expecting the film to wrap up in the way it does at all, because I was not really familiar with the story or anything like that. And again, this is a story that needs to be told. You know, all of the conspiracies and all of the mistreatment that Slahi went through, that stuff is very important for sure. And I think the ending definitely shows why that matters so much. It's just, again, it's a film that isn't focusing on the right things. You have a great performance here from Tahar Rahim. You have some really startling sequences that really do work, but in between all of that is this really generic legal drama that we've seen in half a dozen other films, and they're not with characters that are interesting enough to really keep you invested. And as a result, when it really comes down to it, I just don't think this film is anything more than just a very desperate and, you know, just a very familiar Oscar baity film. I really think that's what this is at the end of the day, and it just didn't really do much of anything to prove otherwise. I think this film could have been a lot more. I think there was definitely more they could have done with it, but they really just didn't, and as a result, this film just didn't really do it for me. The Mauritanian's a film that definitely did have quite a few aspects that I do enjoy, but unfortunately, it just did not impact me in the way that I think I wanted it to, so I am going to give the Mauritanian overall a C+. But guys, so my review of the Mauritanian. Let me know what you guys saw this movie, all your thoughts, and we'll see you guys in my next video, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.